The homoerotic nature of bodybuilding is a long-standing topic in and outside the bodybuilding space. This clip of Andrew Tate launched the topic back into the mainstream.
Bodybuilding is a beauty pageant where dudes try their best to put on muscle so other dudes can say, you're the best looking dude. It's gay.
Obviously, bodybuilders didn't appreciate this sentiment.
Why would that matter? Why does it matter what reasons you have for competing in bodybuilding or trying to develop an aesthetic physique? It doesn't matter!
I asked my followers and subscribers if they agree or disagree with the statement. Majority disagreed, but it begs the question, has the gay community influenced bodybuilding in any way?
I have been a mortal, but you, sirs, my father, are gods.
I will discuss this no further.
Does this mean I have Zeus's permission to leave?
It means you will stay, and I don't wish to hear another word on the subject.
I won't stay.
One common trend among the bodybuilding space is the admiration of Greek sculptures. These sculptures will inspire a young Prussian boy named Frederick William Muller. That boy will later become Eugen Sandow, the father of bodybuilding. Inspired by the marble statues, Eugen trained to develop his physique, even going as far as taking measurements of the statues in order to achieve similar proportions. At the time, bodybuilding wasn't a thing and was far from being a viable occupation. To make ends meet, Eugen joined a circus where he would showcase his incredible strength feats, like lifting a dumbbell with two adult men on each side over his head. What about Eugen's strength began spreading through the streets of Amsterdam when he decided to break all the local strength testing machines. However, Eugen's rise to fame came from defeating popular strongman competitors like Charles Sampson, Franz Bienikowski, and Henry McCann. As more and more people came to Sandow's show, he realized that the crowd were more impressed by his physique than his strength feats. Sandow saw this as a business opportunity and started selling backstage passes to anyone in the audience that could afford to pay him $300. There, men and women alike were free to touch and finger his muscles for their pleasure. In Sandow's dressing room, the two gentlemen attired in dinner suits seemed to have feasted their gaze not upon the pectoral musculature of Sandow's bare body, but also upon his genitalia, with one leaning so forward that his spectacles slipped down his nose. This excerpt and Sandow's tolerance of numerous gay painters, photographers, and social figures is why some speculate on Sandow's sexuality. But this isn't enough evidence to claim that he wasn't heterosexual like he presented himself. Sandow married Blanche Brooke and had 2 kids with her. However, Sandow's tolerance for male clients in his aftershow gave rise to the rumor that gay men frequented his show. These allegations made Sandow concerned about his public image and the legal repercussions it might attract. His fears were reinforced by the social and legal repercussion Oscar Wilde experienced. Wilde's relationship with another man was made public by an outraged father. In an attempt to clear his name, Wilde sued for defamation. This unfortunately allowed authorities to uncover other men he had had relations with. A verdict was never passed as there was no definitive proof of Wilde's homosexuality. However, 3 weeks later, he was retried and imprisoned for 2 years for gross indecency. Shortly after his release, Wilde was banished to France where he died of health complications from his imprisonment. Sandow was nowhere as affluent as Wilde. Worried that he would suffer a similar or even worse fate, Sandow rebranded his show as Sandow's Physical Culture and started revealing exercises and diet practices to achieve a strong aesthetic physique like his. These publications would serve as the foundation of bodybuilding. In fact, the word bodybuilding was first mentioned in one of his books. Another part of Sandow's rebranding was associating himself with the military, claiming his teachings were a patriotic strategy to improve the manliness of young men and therefore the strength and efficiency of the military. This brought him favor with the king and many other powerful figures. However, this didn't stop many from associating Sandow and his creation, bodybuilding, with homosexuality. The rumors seemed to die down with the rise of Charles Atlas, the man who made bodybuilding mainstream. Atlas was able to change the public perception of bodybuilding by associating it with heterosexuality. His most famous ad, The Insult That Made a Man Out of Mark, showcases a young man who through Atlas's training routine is able to defeat a bully and regain the admiration of his date. Atlas ads promoted bodybuilding by claiming it could make you more attractive to women. Atlas also performed strength feats and hosted modeling shoots where he lifted women who were dazzled by his strength and physique.
No girl, Jimmy? No, girls laugh at me because I'm skinny. Do what I did. Send for the Charles Atlas book. It explains how in your own room, dynamic tension can add inches to your physique in just 15 minutes a day. Yes, it's true. Charles Atlas can make a real man of you. Write for free book.
In 1957, popular physique magazine Strength and Health published an article titled, "Let Me Tell You a Fairy Tale." The article contained a letter from a New Jersey police officer frustrated by a local band that ceased the sale of physique magazines in his area. The League of Decency, a local Catholic church group, banned the sale of all physique magazines due to indecency. Several editors, tabloids, and mainstream magazines recognized a huge untapped homosexual market. They began creating content to cater to these individuals in early 1950s. Due to the nature of physique magazines, publications targeting the homosexual market were able to hide in plain sight. However, there were subtle differences that the intended audience slowly recognized. Unlike what you would expect, these magazines weren't known for outright nudity. Instead, they typically featured semi-naked men from different walks of life. To pass off as a physique magazine, the men on the cover also showcased their developed physiques. To further blend in, these magazines would feature popular bodybuilders and inspiring local talent. The general public became aware of their existence when this drawing made it into the physique pictorial. The drawing was such a pivotal moment that author Michael Denny describes it as, "It's like asking people of my generation, where were you when Kennedy was shot?" These magazines offered its readers a means to send and receive letters, photographs, cards, books, posters, songs, and clothing designs for gay men. It also offered a pen pal service where gay men, local and international, could communicate, all of which were illegal at the time. Owning or distributing these magazines could cause you to lose your job or land you in an expensive court case, which could earn you jail time. American author Paul Manette recalls his father scolding him when he discovered these magazines among his Playboy stash. His father said, "There's nothing wrong with those girly magazines. That's perfectly natural. But the homosexual ones, that's not good." Another individual recalled being apprehended by the cops for publicly reading the magazine. Popular physique cover boy Richard Allen said this in regards to the 5,000 letters he had received from his fans. "I found out firsthand what it was these boys wanted. Very few of these 5,000s trained with weights. They were all of the element that is giving weight training its biggest black eye." The article published by Strength and Health whipped up a frenzy that encouraged the US Postal Service to crack down on these type of publications. The US Postal Service worked with law enforcement and local groups to find and harass producers and subscribers alike. Rave picked up the story and released an article titled, "Who Pins Up the Pin Up Boys?" The article aimed to identify the typical subscriber of these type of publications. They were shocked to find out that women rarely patronized them. Their findings were validated when they received an angry anonymous letter from a man in California. "You people ought to wise up to the fact that the gay world is here to stay." Shortly after, mainstream news stations picked up these stories. Sports Illustration called the readers of these magazines lunatic fringe and accused them of turning a wholesome activity that began as a way to get yourself a girl into a way to something quite the opposite. New York Times blamed the rising number of homosexuals in the city on the so-called bodybuilding publications peddling outright homosexual pornography in text and illustration. Association between homosexuality and bodybuilding became generalized in American culture. Owning a barbell became a signifier of someone's homosexual tendencies. Gyms became a new hangout spot for gay men, so much so physicians warned teenage boys to stay away from weightlifting in order to avoid meeting homosexuals. A slew of books and movies will reinforce this narrative, painting bodybuilders as narcissistic, unathletic, and of questionable sexuality. In Muscle Boy 1958, bodybuilding was described as a practice hiding a depraved world of sex perversion and blackmail. In Muscle Beach 1959, a gym owner described bodybuilders in Venice Beach by the following: "While a large section of them are sexually abnormal, they primp the way a woman primps and for the same reasons." In Muscle Beach Party 1964, a group of bodybuilders go against the wholesome protagonist. The bodybuilders were oiled up, wearing matching skimpy pink swimsuits and capes. At the time, it was forbidden to mention homosexuality in movies because they thought it could lower the moral standards of the viewers. To get past this, the director placed an actor in the middle of a contest sign that read Mr. Galaxy, causing it to read Mr. Gay.
"I want to be alone with you.
Did you see this tricep?
I want to take you away with me.
The way I can make it ripple.
Right now.
I haven't had my lunch.
Pigeon.
Instinct. Oh, Mr. Betty, please just sign here, please.
Let's go over it again.
Again, we've already been over it 5 times.
Yeah, but I like the part about the gyms. It's my name.
Very well. Just once more, and furthermore, for various sundries and gratuities.
I'm like getting the feeling of coming in the gym. I'm getting the feeling of coming at home. I'm getting the feeling of coming backstage when I pump up, when I pose out in front of 5,000 people. I get the same feeling. So I'm coming day and night. I mean, it's terrific, right?
The rise of Arnold changed the narrative once again, pumping iron reassociated bodybuilding with heterosexuality. But this wasn't an easy task. Most people don't understand how difficult it was for George Butler to publish the book that later became a smash hit movie. Due to the stigma around bodybuilding, the editor-in-chief cancelled his contract, explaining, "No one in America will buy a book of pictures of half-unclothed men of dubious sexual pursuits." Before the book became a bestseller, New York Times called it a While competing, Arnold relied on acting gigs, program sales, competition money, and his real estate portfolio to support himself. These opportunities aren't readily available for most bodybuilders, so a lot of them resort to odd jobs to support themselves. A study carried out in Southern California's most popular gym highlighted a prominent hustle culture among bodybuilders. Hustling in this regard refers to the implicit or explicit sale of sex by bodybuilders to gay men. Hustling is also referred to as G for P or gay for pay. One of the interviewee explained, "When I first came here, I wasn't aware of half of the situation, even though I had friends hit on me. Before, people had to prove to me they were gay. Now, you got to prove to me that you're straight." An exchange between the interviewer and another interviewee explained how prominent hustling was at these gyms. Here, pointing at the gym, there's a lot of hustling going on. What percentage of bodybuilders do you estimate are hustling? I'd say somewhere around half. At these gyms, many amateur bodybuilders rely on hustling to support themselves in hopes of going pro. Here's a quote from a conversation between an interviewer and a hustler. "It's not that I'm trying to make it okay for me. This is a constant conflict in myself because I don't have to be one. But I train for Mr. America for 8 hours a day. 8 hours of some sort of training. I couldn't do that working 12 hours a day in some shipyard. I simply couldn't do it." Even though hustling was and is still commonplace in bodybuilding, bodybuilders at large see it as a disgrace to the sport. Any bodybuilder exposed as a hustler is ridiculed to no end. It's a popular belief that Kai Green's chances of winning an Olympia were ruined when he was outed as a hustler in the grapefruit scandal.
I think there was something going on with Kai where he wasn't really liked. It wasn't that they thought he was a bad person, but there's some, let's say, qualities about him that kept him from winning. There's some sort of thing against Kai. I couldn't tell you exactly. Maybe it's the hair. Maybe they don't like his posing. I don't know what it is, but I don't think they would ever have given him the title, honestly. And Kai didn't directly say this, but he hinted that he'd spoken to a top official, bodybuilding official, who basically told him that. So I think that somehow he got word that, "Hey buddy, there's no way we're gonna let you win." So why would he knock himself out trying to compete here when he has no chance?
Those films and that time of his life as a dancer and making erotic films, it definitely came back to haunt him. There's no doubt that people are judging him because of that. And that may or may not have affected his placements. We'll never know. So.
There's a lot more examples where bodybuilding and homosexuality overlap, but does that mean bodybuilding is a queer sport? I don't think so. Bodybuilding is a sport that focuses on developing the body, which has nothing to do with sexuality. Any sport can be described in a sexual manner. You could say wrestling is a sport where two buff and sweaty dudes stumble around until one is able to dominate the other. This doesn't make wrestling a queer sport. In fact, wrestling is considered as a hypermasculine sport.